Hi guys, thank you again for joining on another video. I really appreciate you guys that have been there from the beginning, coming along with my journey, and also the ones that are just joining me. I noticed that I picked up 3 more subscribers this week. Thank you so much. I'm really humbled at the response. I'm getting responses way better than I thought I would, and it's really humbling, but it's also wonderful that in hopes that my videos have blessed others and maybe helped others, if nothing else, to let others know that they're not the only ones going through what they're going through. I know when I started finding out that others had gone through similar things that I was going through at the time last year, that was tremendous in of itself, to know that, hey, I'm not alone. Yeah, it grieves me that there are many people that are dealing with abuse, various forms of abuse, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But it's nice to know that there are others out there that know how I feel and that get it. So, as I ask every video, please share away so that others will realize that they're not alone. They're not um, isolated, you know, that we're there. So, I was asked by one of my subscribers to have a video about how long I was married, about my kids. And though I've touched on that in other videos, I didn't really go into detail. As far as what my kids endured while they were younger and I was still married, I'm not going to go into great detail because that's their story to deal with, their story to tell should they choose to tell it. Um, I'll briefly go over a little bit of what I know they went through, but I'm not going to go in detail because, like I said, it's for their story to tell. Maybe one day I'll have them on one of my videos. That's totally up to them. Um, I'm putting myself out on the line here, but I don't expect them to. I'm doing this to help others in hopes that others he learn how to heal, learn from my mistakes, and from the things that I learned works. And I don't want to put them out there if they don't want to. They are each dealing with their own um, situations. So, with them, because if you notice, I don't even mention their names because I want to keep them out of it as much as possible. Um, but I will talk briefly in generalities about what I saw that they endured. For starters, I was married 32 years before I left him. Um, I was asked, how did the kids feel about the divorce? They were ecstatic. At first, one of my kids didn't even believe it was going to happen because I had been saying it for years that I was going to leave my ex and didn't. And I even did leave a couple of times and went right back because I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought, God says in His Word He hates divorce. So, I can't get divorced. Well, God also says that He hates abuse. He expects us to all love each other and treat each other with respect. If you're abusing someone, you don't really love them. At least not like with a godly love. You just love the fact that you can abuse them and get away with it. I mean, I'm speaking real here. To be honest, my kids had been begging me to leave him for, in all honesty, at least 15 years, if not longer. To my recollection, it's been at least 15 years that my kids were begging me to leave him because he was abusing all of us. And because I had gone through so much abuse with my biological father, the abuse that my ex was doing to the kids, emotional abuse mainly, it seemed normal in a way. I mean, I know that sounds, to someone who's not been through this, I know that sounds way out of whack. And had I not gone through the abuse that I did, it would have sounded whacked to me. But when you go through that for so bloody long, it's your normal. You don't know anything different. You don't know that you deserve to be treated kindly. You deserve to be treated respectfully. You deserve to be shown love, and treated gently. When you go through that abuse, especially for as long as I have and that others have in similar situation, your world gets skewed. Your normal, everybody else who's lived a typical life, I don't like to use the word normal, but everybody who's lived a typical life wonders, how could you view that as normal? Well, I can look at someone who's had a typical life, an uneventful life, and say, how can you view that, your life, as normal? You just don't know until you get out of the situation. To be honest, over the past year, it's just now within the past few months that I realized that what the four of us, me and my three kids, have endured was horrible. Because it was so normal for me to be abused and to be hurt in some way, shape, or form, that I didn't think it was that bad. That's part of why it took me so long to leave. Because in essence, I was minimizing what I was going through and what the kids were going through or had gone through. And I wasn't intentionally minimizing it. It just didn't seem that bad. And then also it didn't help that, my ex, I look back now and realize it was a form of control, would go on the internet show and pull up all of these horrible pictures of women that had bruises all over their faces and stuff from their abusers, and would tell me, "Do you have that on your face? Did I ever put that on your face?" And no, not like that. And he was like, "So don't ever say that I beat the crap out of you." Because I confronted him on that a time or two, uh, the incident back in 2007 when I had called the police on him and put a protection on him then. And then believed his story, how he was sorry, and I took him back. Well, I knew what he was showing me. He was trying to defend the abuse he was doing by making it look not as bad. And at first, logically, I knew, no, abuse is abuse. Whether I had bruises all over my face or not one bruise, because emotional abuse is brutal. It's a whole different ball game. It's not worse than physical abuse. I've said that before, but it's a whole different ball game because it's subliminal. Some abusers are so good you don't even realize they're abusing you emotionally, and that's part of what I went through with my ex, because he could get in my mind and was so manipulative that for the longest time I didn't realize that what he was doing. He was playing mind games with me. Wasn't until about 2 years before I left that I started seeing the mind games and not letting it affect me as much. But then I was in the mode of wanting to save the marriage, wanting to not give up on the marriage, because I don't like giving up on people in general. I have this Pollyanna attitude that I want to look at the best in people and assume that there's always some good in them. Some people are just plain evil. I'm not saying my ex is, but with all the abuse that's coming to light that I'm realizing, he was not exactly a nice person. And once I started realizing that, I started realizing that I needed to start thinking about leaving. But then he would start this bit about he couldn't live without me, that he hopes that he's the one who dies first because he couldn't live if I died first. And he always exhibited that he couldn't live on his own. And thinking about it, I enabled that because I handled everything. I handled the finances, I handled the grocery shopping, I handled the bills. Y'all, the bills were all in my name because I handled them anyway. So it was just easier to put it in my name rather than even putting it in both of our names and then having to have him around to get his permission for whatever bill company to talk to me. Because, with HIPAA, you got to have that permission. So it was easier just to put all the bills in my name, including the rent. The lease was in my name. He was on there as an occupant. But my name was on the lease because I was the one who handled everything anyway. So it was just easier. And I look back, and that only enabled him. Now he's in a position where he has to take care of things himself. And from my understanding, he's more capable of taking care of himself than he ever gave indication to. And I realize now that that, in and of itself, was a form of manipulation. Because he knew my heart, and he knew my compassion for others, especially for him, even though he didn't deserve any compassion. And so he took advantage of that and played the victim, played the person who couldn't take care of himself very well. He's getting things done now, from my understanding, because he doesn't have a choice. And from my understanding, he's doing quite well. I mean, comparatively speaking, considering. And so he has been like this for out of our 32 years of marriage. He was like that for at least half of it. I mean, over half actually, about I want to say 20 years at least. I mean, before we moved where we live now, when we lived in our home state, my daughter reminded me that he was bad then. But to my recollection, he got worse after we moved up here. I don't know why that is. I don't honestly believe that it has anything to do with moving up here. Up here was actually the best thing we did. I mean, moving up here was actually the best thing we did. As I stated, I have 3 children that are adults now. One is in his 30s. My daughter is in her late 20s, and my youngest will be 20 this year. Heaven help me. And had I divorced my ex 15 years ago, they would have been ecstatic. And like I started to say earlier, when I first started talking about divorce, none of my kids believed me, really. They wanted to, but I had talked about leaving him so often, and how I was planning to leave, that and planning to leave and never did. That, of course, when I did finally leave for good, they didn't want to believe it. They were scared to believe it. And I don't blame them. Even my mother and my sister found it hard to believe. My sister, bless her heart, when one of my kids was talking to her, because she's the crazy aunt to my kids. I gave birth to them, but my kids are close to her. And one of my kids was talking to her and said, I can't believe it. She said this before. And all my sister could say was, well, I gotta take her at her word right now. So I'm taking her at her word that she's gonna divorce him. think when that Sunday that I went to the lawyer's office, yeah, a lawyer met me on a Sunday. When the lawyer met me on a Sunday, and I gave him the money for the retainer. Now, you have no idea how I saved and scrimped so I could get that retainer. And I actually got a discount on the retainer because I had found this lawyer through a program of where I work, of which I am so grateful for. So when I went to the lawyers to hand him the first part of the retainer, that the agreement was I hand him this much of the retainer and then he would file the paperwork with the courts and stuff. And I took a picture of that and sent it to my kids. One of them, the one that disbelieved me the most, which I don't blame my child for that. I could almost hear the sigh of relief. But I also know by the child's own admission, it was still hard for them to believe. It was like afraid to hope. And I totally got that. I mean, my kids have been so honest with how they were feeling and feelings that they were dealing with. And I'm so grateful for that. Was it always easy to hear? No. Sometimes I would hear what the feelings were, and it was like a knife through my heart, because I didn't realize that I had allowed some of these feelings to happen. I mean, some of the things to happen that caused these feelings. But I always welcomed the brutal honesty. I'm the type of person that I would rather you be brutally honest with me and we'll work through the pain than to hide things and let things fester and blow up way out of proportion. Or understandably blow up and then damage is irreparable. I'm the type of person that I'd like to take something head on, grab it, put it up front, deal with it, and get it healed. And I mean, I'm even more so like that now. So I'm grateful that my kids knew that they could talk to me very brutally honest, and we can get things worked out. Because of that, there's been a lot of healing. I'm not saying that everything's healed and everything's good and hunky-dory. I'm sure there's still some things that need to be dealt with. I know there's things that need to be dealt with me still, even a year out. I mean, I've been divorced for, tomorrow will be 5 months. And I'm still dealing with feelings that are coming up. In yesterday's therapy session, my therapist and I were talking, and he thinks that in my fear of being vulnerable, that there's hidden trauma somewhere, either trauma that's been hidden with my father or my ex, not sure which. Quite honestly, it's probably both. Because the abuse that I dealt with my father, I dealt with my ex too, and vice versa. They were both um, two peas in a pod, pretty much. Um, they were both very, very similar. Um, a big similarity is they both felt that others' purpose was to serve them. My father, I was only good to my father um, when he needed me. Yeah, he did do things for me. He paid rent for a year for me while my ex wasn't working because he was supposedly had a nervous breakdown. Um, I look at it now and he just didn't want to work. Um, and I was going to school, but my father used the fact that he was helping with rent by making me his go-to person, his servant. I don't want to say maid, but because I really didn't clean his place, but I was his servant. He needed groceries done. He'd give me a call, say, I need you to do groceries. I'm coming to pick you up in a half hour. It's like, whoa, okay, not like I don't have a life. I've got two kids to help, raise and deal with, and a husband who's has mental illness, or I thought he had mental illness, and you want me to just drop what I'm doing? Well, I'm helping you with your rent. I'm helping you with your groceries. What could I say? I would have to do his laundry. Oh, yeah, that was so gross, too. Having to do his dirty laundry. Because he was a big man. So I'll leave that to your imagination. But he felt that it was my purpose to take care of him. I quit college in part because he manipulated me and making me think that it was my duty to take care of him. Because I was going to school to study to be a fashion designer. And I was actually loving it. I had a friend in college that we had plans that we were going to move to Dallas, which was the fashion capital of the South at that time. I don't know if it still is. And we were going to open up our own boutique, sell our own designs. It was, we had all of these plans that we were going to do. And at first, my father didn't take me seriously. I guess he thought it was a passing phase or whatever. But when he started realizing that, yeah, we were serious, we were going to do this, he started trying to talk me out of it, coming up with all kinds of things. Well, you're going to fail. You're going to come back here and come back here. And I'm like, well, if we fail, we fail. At least we could say we tried. And, we'll keep trying until we succeed. Or, you're going to be coming back here. Well, if I do, I do. I can at least say I tried and I gave it a shot. And when none of that worked, he pulled the ultimate trick card and said, but then if you go away to Dallas, I won't have anybody in who's going to take care of dear old dad. That did it. That basically took all the air out of my sail, so to speak. And I didn't really have any desire anymore. I wound up, part of it, I was engaged to someone else at the time, not my current ex. And I figured, well, I'm going to get married, have kids anyway. I'm not going to have time for career, and I'm going to be taking care of him. So, I quit. I quit college. Now, in retrospect, fashion designing business is very, very cutthroat. And I'm not a cutthroat type person. So I don't know that I would have been able to succeed at that. But it would have sure been nice to try and see how I did with it. Because I do have talent where that's concerned. But I would say my kids are now overjoyed that I'm divorced. They don't want to have anything to do with him at all. Because, the protection order is just, he can't contact me. He could contact the kids, and he hasn't tried. And yes, my kids are grown adults, but they're still kids to me. He hasn't tried to contact them because he could have talked with our pastor, or he could have talked to his own sister. And if he legitimately wanted to try to contact them, his sister would contact them and ask them. And they have no desire to contact him. One of my kids has moved out of the city, in part because they didn't want to bump into my ex. So they're ecstatic that I've left. And bless their hearts, my kids always check up on me, when there's an anniversary coming up of some sort. My youngest, who still lives with me, on what would have been our 33rd anniversary, he didn't mention anything about it or anything, but he was watching me. Throughout the day, he'd come check on me, come out of his room, check on me, come out to cook dinner, get something for me, and then the next day, he said how proud he was of me, that I handled it so well and that he was watching me. So they're very protective of me. Oh my goodness, if anybody looks at me wrong, that's all she wrote. All three of my kids. That'll be it. I am very blessed to have such a wonderful relationship with my kids now. Things have healed tremendously. Forgiveness has been asked and given. In other words, I've asked for forgiveness and they've given it. And in fact, today, part of why I'm doing this video so early today is because Later on this afternoon, I'm going to go drive to go visit um, my daughter who lives out of town. And that feels so good to be able to plan a time where I can go visit her and spend time with her and her boyfriend. And we're going to watch a movie together. And it just feels so wonderful. Because there was a time in the not so distant past that I could not have even thought of that. She lived in the same city as I do for the longest time. It's just been recent, within the past year, that she had moved out of the city. But y'all, there was one point she didn't live far from me at all. She lived, I don't know, about maybe 12 blocks away. And I couldn't even go see her. I couldn't even go 12 blocks because of my ex. Because it was extremely rare that I had the vehicle we shared all to myself. Because if I had the vehicle, he was in there. I rarely drove because, for one thing, I never liked driving with him in the. We had a big SUV. I never liked driving with him in the vehicle because every little thing he would pick apart, and he'd get me so nervous that I would make more mistakes. And I just decided I'm not going to drive with him in the vehicle unless it was an emergency. And that was also a form of control, because heaven forbid that I'm better than him in anything. All three of my kids have said that I'm a way better driver than him. And I even knew that because, if for nothing else, because I'm not an aggressive driver. He was a very aggressive driver. If somebody would look at it wrong, he'd want to go down the street chasing them 90 to nothing. But here my daughter was living just 12 blocks away, and I couldn't go see her. My oldest son lived about the same distance in a different direction, and I couldn't go see him either because of my ex. So it just feels so good that I can, Saturday afternoon, pick up and go take a nice drive to go see my daughter and watch a movie together. Excuse me, y'all, I got a cold or something. It feels good to be able to call my oldest son and say, hey, what you doing? And talk to him and go see him. He only lives 6 blocks away from me now. And I see him at least every other day. Life is so blessed to the infinite degree since I left my ex, and since I had him removed, and that it's just me now, and that now that I'm divorced. The day I officially was divorced, October 21st of 2020, was the day things really started healing, because that's when my kids finally were able to rest and say, this is final. It's set in stone. That's when they all three collectively breathed a sigh of relief. My mom was right there in the courtroom with me, and that felt good because for so long our relationship was strained because of my ex, because my mother dealt with him nicely because of me, because she loves me, I'm a daughter, but she couldn't stand him. And my sister barely talked to him on the rare occasion that they saw him because my sister couldn't stand him. And things have healed so much. I didn't realize that there was so much disarray, discord between me and my mom and my sister, even until I had my ex removed and I started going through the process of the divorce. I'm sure that my mother and my sister both held their breaths until I saw the lawyer and signed the paperwork to start the process. My mother even helped me with a couple $100 towards the retainer, just to help me out. I didn't need it. I'd have been able to come up with it by God's grace. But my mom just, that was her way of helping, saying, I'm here behind you. I've had the support of my family, my extended family, on both sides of the family, my mother's and my father's. I've gotten closer to them because of it, because I kept my distance for so long because I couldn't have a relationship with them because he was mad that I would have a relationship with anything or anyone that took away attention from him. I could barely have friends. I have one friend that is my daughter's godmother. We would go a month or two without talking. She would call me. I'd answer the phone and say, look, I can't talk right now. I'll try to call you later. And I couldn't call her back because if I tried having a conversation with her, just talking, he would have to interject. Tell her this, tell her that, or put her on hold for a minute, and he'd want to tell me something. And it's like, I'm not wanting to put the person on hold just to talk to him. I feel that's rude. So I would tell her, okay, look, let me go, and I'll call you later. I'd get off the phone, and he would be like, well, you didn't have to tell her goodbye. I just wanted to tell you. I'm like, but no, because you kept talking to me. I couldn't have a conversation with her. So instead of being rude, I just hung up. And he was like, well, you're not like me. I would just tell the person, hold on. I'm like, yeah, but you don't continue to do that when the person talks and when calls to talk to you. He never fathomed being courteous, or if the attention wasn't all on him, then he would get so mad and angry, or he would turn it around to where he could get attention. And so that's why I hardly had any friends, hardly talked to my family. I had stopped going to Bible studies before they stopped because of COVID. Because I would go to a women's Bible study if we had if we ran over in time, he'd have a fit saying that I don't want to spend time with him. I'm putting them over him. Um, if I did anything outside, I could even go to the grocery store without him. He had to come with me because we do things together. It's grocery shopping. And I would even tell him, one of the rare areas that I was honest with him, I go way faster when I'm at the grocery store alone because I don't have you telling me, why don't we get this, why don't we get that, putting this in a basket, that in a basket. I can keep track better, and I'm in and out in a half hour, even when I have to make big groceries. And see, then he'd get mad. Oh, you don't want me with you. When honestly, no, I didn't. But it was just I wanted to go faster. Also, I couldn't stand going out in public with him because if somebody looked in his direction, not necessarily even looking at him, just in his direction, oh, they get mean mugging him, they're looking bad at him, and he would start being rude to people. Oh my goodness, it was so embarrassing. Y'all, some of the things he would say out loud just to try to trigger somebody would be embarrassing as all get out. And that's kind of when I discovered that the grocery store I regularly went to did online shopping where you could order everything online and just go through the drive-thru, pick it up, they put it in your vehicle, and you're off. I started doing that because it meant that he had very minimal contact with the outside world in my presence. Because I never went into the grocery store with him. There was our local grocery store that's a few blocks away from us. I never went in there with him because he was always so stupid that I didn't want to get tangled up in his mess because I just knew that one day he was going to get himself in deep trouble and then I would be tangled up in it simply by by association. So it's like, no, I never wanted to be involved in that. So life is so much better now that he's gone. My kids, like I said, my kids and I have a way better, way better relationship now. A lot of things are healed. I feel very close to my kids, and nothing's going to come in the way of that ever again. That means that I stay single for the rest of my life. I'm good with that. You know, I have some bouts of loneliness on occasion, but, you know, I'm dealing with things right now of not wanting to be vulnerable and not wanting to be hurt. So, I'm good being single. I got my kids. I'm got my foundation that I'm trying so desperately to write out a proposal so I can get that done. So I got everything ahead of me. And I'm doing my best to not look behind, which is way easier said than done. But this video is about the longest video I have done. So I will let you go for the week. You guys have a wonderful week. Stay blessed. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a questions and answers video. So if y'all have any questions, just put it in the comments or email it to me at godswoman.ph@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your questions, and in a couple of weeks, if I get enough questions, I'll go ahead and answer them. You guys have a good week, and always like the video and share, share, share. Stay blessed.